Welcome to another episode of Tech Lounge, a podcast where we discuss the ever-changing world of technology. And now your host, Dan Duran.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
We should sing that song. It's Friday again. Saturday and Sunday. Friday again. Oh, it's so good to be sitting on the saddle again. Hey, guys. My name is Dan Duran, and I'm the host of the Tech Lounge. Here we discuss topics related to business, leadership, technology, and today, cybersecurity. Welcome to the show, everybody. Security governance strategies. The good GRCs, right?
There's no bad. It's all good.
It's all good? Perfect.
All good. Yeah.
Just remember, we stream live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, everywhere. We're also on podcasts, including the Apple Podcast. So make sure that you follow us using the hashtag Dan Duran every Friday. So now sit back, relax. This, my friends, is the Tech Lounge. We should have like a little beatbox or something.
A sports theme or something in the back.
Exactly. Yeah. So with me, I have my co-host extraordinaire, of course, the Rock of Rhino, right? The one and only, my superstar.
Yeah, nice.
Andrew Summerton, CEO of Rhino Cybersecurity. Hello. Give him a big round of applause.
Thanks,
Andrew.
Dan,
How's it going?
I'm good, buddy. How are you doing, Dan? Good to be here, everybody. It's been a couple weeks. We missed everybody, so really happy to see some love in the audience there, actually, which is great. I'm sure Gladstone will be sharing that with us, but excited to be back.
Absolutely. And thank you, Gladstone, for being in the shadows. That's what he said this morning. Moving the dials and helping us out with the whole programming of this show for you guys. So, Andrew, let's get on with the show. Okay. GRC. So governance, risk, and compliance.
Compliance, absolutely.
Give us a lowdown from what are the pain points for executives like yourself when it comes to GRC?
Well, I think it's cybersecurity and understanding the infrastructure of your organization is critical, more now than ever. And so GRC is more than just cybersecurity. It's understanding and implementing policies, procedures for every aspect of your business. So from the growth aspect to governance to understanding accountability, different departments. Are you looking for outside funding to see how structured your organization is? So we could talk about this in every different kind of facet. But as a person who owns and operates a company, a couple, it's all about internal organization structure and accountability to making sure you're doing everything right. And that's really what this talk's all about today, is really understanding what GRC is, and then basically breaking it down and how you as an organization should be implementing it to make your business and your employees and your infrastructure stronger, better, and again, advancing your business into the future.
Nice. Well said.
Thanks.
Great. Amazing. Yeah. So I think that, like if you're an executive, right, you're the CEO, the CTO, COO, and executive, the first thing is like, how the heck do we do this? You're confused. You're focusing on growing the business. You're focusing on the finance. You're focusing on the operations. The last thing that you want to do is focus on governance and rules and structure and trickling all that down to the organization down below, right?
And I think that's a really good point, Dan. And when we talk about GRC on a global scale or a mass scale, it's not as difficult as it seems. Your company, every company has different sizes, different needs, different wants, etc. And I think by executing based on what your needs are, what your infrastructure looks like, what your growth model looks like, and as long as it comes from the top down and you implement it correctly and seamlessly, I think that's critical to making it successful. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. It's a process. And if you can't do it, I think it's really important bringing in an organization or an individual to help you with that process. And there's also tools out there that can help you as well.
Absolutely, that's the key, eh? Top-down approach. That is actually the key. Hey, Gladstone, crowd control. All right, let's see who's on the channel, guys. If you are out there, say hello, send a shout out, and we'll display it here on the screen for you. Who do we have?
I think Gladstone's sleeping in the background there. Gladstone, you coming? He's getting coffee.
Oh, there you go, Sean. Hey, Sean.
Gladstone. Happy Friday, Sean.
Happy Friday to you, Sean. Sonia Castilla.
Sonia.
Hey.
Everybody like my British flag? Yeah.
Julian says hello. Hello, Julian. How are you? Kevin
Hi,
Fan.
Kevin.
Hi. Lots of love today. We have Chan Jiz Satter. Looking forward to another great event. Thanks. Thank you for coming back, Chan Jiz. Who else do we have?
You are back.
You got this. I hope
All right,
so.
Felix. Appreciate it, Felix. I don't know. I'm a little nervous. It's only. By the way, speaking of that, and we were happy to be back. I think, Dan, is this not one of the only shows you and I have done together? We haven't had a special guest in.
Exactly. We don't have a special guest today. It's just the two of us.
It's just
the two of us. You can make me. We try.
Okay, we're not. This is not a Dan's audition for America's Got Talent. There we go.
All right, perfect. Okay, let's get into the first subject, which is alignment and responsiveness. Right, the whole strategy behind GRC is alignment, right, and responsiveness. So, alignment when it comes to goals and objectives and what you want to accomplish. Focusing on your critical assets and then everything else. Because I got to tell you, when we do a vulnerability assessment, for example, either internal or external, how many pages of vulnerabilities do we get on average, Andrew?
Oh, on average, probably 800 to 1,000, but it could put 1,500 to 1,800, 2,000 even in some cases.
Yes, quite a bit, right? The bigger the organization, the more loopholes that you're going to find, right? But the key is alignment in terms of how you can solve the things that are more important to you, right? They crown jewels. And not only that, how can you react in a fast way, right? So the responsiveness is very critical right from the top. And I'm not talking about just cybersecurity. I'm talking about anything that has to do with the organization. A fire, a flood, a power outage, like losing internet access, all of that stuff needs to be added into the mix, right?
It's a reference tool, right? At the end of the day, if you don't have all this in place, and say, for example, the person who is in charge is not there, is away sick, on holidays, and something catastrophic happens, what do you do, right? And it's funny because, and I know you kind of laugh, but it's a sad reality, and it's like, oh, it'll never happen to us. But if you have these policies and procedures in place, it doesn't fall on the shoulders of one individual. It falls on the shoulder of, again, compliance and governance and risk management, and basically making sure that the tools are in place so you can execute accordingly, no matter who is overseeing everything.
Yeah. And the first thing that people, like a lot of executives, they come to us and they're like, okay, so we're completely lost. We don't know where to start, where to begin. We are a growing organization. We've grown X millions of dollars over the past 2 years. And now everything seems to be disorganized, and we need to start pulling the strings in terms of compliance and policies and procedures and all of that throughout the organization. Where do we start? And what we tell them all the time is, well, you got to start with a maturity assessment, right? A cybersecurity, because we're a cybersecurity company, cybersecurity maturity assessment. First, you need to determine what you have in place and what that gap is. So we do a gap analysis, obviously, to see where you are right now and where you need to be, right? So that's the first thing, the fundamental part before we start creating policies and all of the other stuff. You need to know where you are in the process, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that's the alignment part, right? The alignment part, it's very, very important in objectives, right? You need to set up your objectives. So that, I think that's the next point, which is
Dan, and just want to jump in there. I think where that, I mentioned earlier, and I think you reiterated when I say about executing this from the top down. As your company grows your infrastructure starts to be spread thin, because what happens is more and more things are happening, more and more your work is becoming layered on you. The company doesn't necessarily want to invest on new people, and as it's continuing to grow. So that there's that balance of how do we put all this stuff in place and still leverage our team, and it's really, really critical. So what happens is, by bringing in an organization, let's say, or assigning somebody in your organization, if you have the time or the capability, it's about executing what your needs or your desires are from the top down and putting those alignments in place. Because if you don't, you're going to have a mishmash and you're going to go nowhere fast, right?
Yep.
So you need to have a clear picture, a clear execution plan, and it needs to be executed again and bought in from the top down. And I say that because if you try and manage up, you're always going to get resistance, right? So I think it's really, really critical to make sure it's reversed, and then everything aligns beautifully.
Everybody has to be in the same boat when it comes 100%. To the executives.
Yeah.
So that way, the decisions that you make are very objective, and that's the key, right? So, and then the other thing is, it is very important for companies to hire consultants that know what they're doing. And they're authorities on that field. Why? Because by bringing in a consultant, you have the group executives that can actually listen to an external source,
right?
And then everything trickles down, right? So sometimes what happens in organizations, and this is true for pretty much all organizations, is that when people inside of the organization make decisions, some other people, whether it is the board or the executives, they're not very impressed, or even though the quality of the decision making and the things that they're doing, the planning, all of that, it's very good. They look at it, meh, and they go,
not as invested.
Yeah, but then if they see an external source like a consultant coming in to kind of analyze and do a report and consult on those things, then they see it as like, hey, this person or this company is an expert at their field, so we're going to pay attention and we're going to listen.
And I think that's a great point, Dan, because if you look at a lot of times when a company is growing, or the executives say, oh, I don't want to invest in that, I don't want to see that. And if somebody's assigned it in the company internally, again, the investment aspect, I don't mean financial, the buy-in investment can be pushed and pushed and pushed because it's controlled within. But if there's an actual physical investment, a cost investment to bringing on an expert, not only do you have more buy-in, but then you're going to be executing it accordingly based on that buy-in and how you're going to deploy it. What's really important too is you got to look at it more as an investment in your business. So it's not about a cost to get somebody or an expert to come in and help you do this, because at the end of the day, by doing that, and you hit the GRC components, you have all the things in place, you have the policy procedures in every aspect, your risk management, etc. It's going to strengthen your business model. So for example, for investments, for exit strategies, someone looking at your organization, if you have it all in place, so again, it's an investment, and you as the person running the show, whether you're the CEO of the company or whatever place you are, that you have the ability to put this in place, it's an investment strategy, and you have to understand that. It's really important.
Yeah. Do we have any questions out there? I think we have a questions from Janzit.
Nope.
How to determine the correct misalignment? Oh, what a wonderful question. That's a great question, because there's different types of misalignment, right? So what we do when we go into a partnership with our clients from a governance perspective is we need to listen, right? We need to pay attention to not just one individual, but every individual in the executive and the board, right? So everybody is controlling one department, right? Whether it is HR, sales, marketing, operations, warehousing, IT, very important. One of the most important departments is IT, because those are the wheels that move the entire engine, right? When we go in with questionnaires, right? They're all cybersecurity related, to see how they're handling data, sensitive data, especially PII, right? If it's medical, then the PHI. How their employees are handling security from their department, whether they're when they log into third party apps, for example, to vendor management, to all of that. So we ask for the key questions in that department, and only to the people that are involved in that department. So we create a questionnaire, and it's like 50 something questions, right? On that questionnaire, very, very involved. Then we hunt down the next department, right? So HR, how are they dealing with privacy, for example? Not so much privacy, but employee information, right? PII when it comes to employees. When we go to the marketing department, for example, how are they dealing with privacy information from clients, right? So we set up customized questionnaires for each of the departments. We collect all the information, and then out of the information that we collect, at the same time we are working with the client to see their compliance requirements. So what if, if it's an e-commerce, for example, we try to see if they want, kind of walk them through the path to PCI DSS. If it's a bigger company, then like NIST 800-53. Smaller company, maybe NIST cybersecurity framework. What we do is we need to set up a roadmap that we're going to follow, right? So when we gather the information, then we apply the there's the scoring system, and we can use, for example, the maturity level scoring system that goes from 1 to 5, and place them in the different dimensions. So there is like a spider graph with all the dimensions on security, and then we give them grades from 0 to 5. Once we compile that graph, then it turns into the actual cybersecurity risk. Maybe it is a process, right? It might take a month, it might take a couple of months to follow, but if once it's done right, it is perfect, because once you have the dimensions of where your risk is based on, then you can make decisions that are very objective and prioritize on those on the things that you need to do first.
And depending on the size of the company is the duration of how long it takes, right? I mean, sometimes it's almost smarter to get these things in place as you see growth and envision this, instead of implementing it when you're a very, very large organization. A little bit longer to do, a little bit more difficult, a lot more hurdles to overcome.
Yeah, you got to scale down, right? So, and scale up. So if you have, for example, a company that is a large organization with multiple offices and over 1,000 people, 2,000, 5,000 people, one consultant just like me working with it's not going to cut it. It's got to be a bigger, more structured process. If it's a smaller company that has, let's say, 300 employees or 400 employees, it's a little easier. If it's a very small company or a smaller company, 50 employees, then the process, you just scale down. You don't need to overkill when it comes to
I think that's critical, Dan. You're right.
Don't overkill it.
Don't overkill it. 100%. Small processes to get you to where you're going.
Yeah, good question. I hope I answered that, Janjiz. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the objective decision making, right? Where is it? There you go.
There it is.
Sorry, Glasson. I think I clicked on the button before you. Objective decision making. What I mean by decision, there's a decision making process, obviously, but the decision process needs to be objective. What does that mean to you, Andrew? As the CEO of our company, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, I think it's got to apply to the masses. I think it's got to be, it's got to be.
Sorry for putting you on the spot, buddy.
It's okay. It's got to be. It's got to be specific, but it's got to be, again, objective. I mean, I think it's important that the end goal for the company, the strengthening of the company, and everything else has to be in place. But you have to be objective to what that's going to look like. So when making that decision, you got to make sure it meets the criteria of what we're putting in place, but it's also got to meet the criteria of the organization or the company. That's what it would mean to me. But I mean, maybe back over to you, Dan.
Yes. As a consultant, I would say, or risk advisor, I would say objective in the sense of qualitative and quantitative data that can be gathered and that can be analyzed, right? So what I mean by quantitative is dollars and cents, right? So for loss, for example, if we were to lose this asset, if we were to something happen to the company, how much money are we going to lose? What is the time of that losses, operation loss, etc. So that's the quantitative, the dollars and cents of that risk, right?
Now I understand your
And then
question better.
the qualitative, in terms of the likelihood of that happening. For example, that's
Definitely.
qualitative, and all the other external factors. Once you are able to quantify, then it becomes subjective. Because or else it will be a subjective decision making. Subjective means, oh yeah, they're just throwing darts at the wall and see what comes out. That's very subjective. When you make decisions based entirely on your gut feeling, it sometimes is not the best thing, when it comes to a corporate environment. You
Right.
have to have the risk. Um, you have to have the risk based on dollars, right?
Right.
That if I have a server, if I have an asset, let's say, and this is what I was explaining to you, right? If I
We'll
have
talk
an
about
asset, and if I lose that asset, and it's going to cost me $200,000 to
replace
bring
it.
it back online.
Okay.
However, it's going to cost me $500,000 to repair it. Where's the decision making there, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not going to fix the asset. I'm just going to let it
Crazy.
be and try to mitigate around and isolate that asset, or fix as much as possible, but not replace it, because it is more costly than actually losing it.
Losing it. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
those are the key questions that executives need to ask, right?
Yeah.
We got another question.
Yeah. How do we ensure that you have enough resources dedicated to IT or an IT department? It's a good question, and it's a question that's do you hire as a company growing? Some companies don't have IT departments, so they hire an MSP, an outsource, which is a managed service provider.
Yes.
An IT company, they may have one individual. It could be a very large organization that generates lots of money, but they only have maybe 10 employees, which happens. So you may only need one individual as an IT individual company. So it really depends, Diego, on the infrastructure and what's in place. Like a manufacturing organization that has multiple moving points, multiple locations, offices, administrative, basically HR, payroll. You have the production, shipping, receiving, all those things. There's probably a lot more moving parts, so you're going to need more IT individuals to help oversee that process.
Yes.
So it really depends on the organization. It really does.
Yeah. And okay, so it's very important when you're a growing company, right? At the very beginning, some companies do hire junior IT staff, to kind of get by. I don't recommend that, because there's a lot of weight on their shoulders. And when you're a novice, you just came out of your programs in school and stuff like that, and you're green. It's better for an organization to just hire an MSP, so that could manage IT for you, and pay them monthly on some sort of agreement, right? SLA hours, for example, because you get better coverage, right? As you grow, if you're paying the MSP way more than it would cost you to hire somebody with really good IT skills, then that's where the decision starts to come in. Then you say, okay, you know what? We should hire somebody, an expert, to help us out, because we're growing, right? And so on, right? So, but then when you're a big organization, I think it's all you need to have the structure. If there's no procedures in place, as you said, Andrew, if everything becomes disorganized.
Yeah.
The key is that if I have a senior IT in-house, and I'm following a procedure, there is a procedure for whatever encryption, like a server configuration, secure server configuration, any of that stuff, change management, whatever. I follow that procedure, but I don't. That information is not just in my head, right?
Great
So
point.
I'm
Yeah.
the expert, and maybe I'm working on a silo here, and I'm not sharing the information out to anybody else. That is really bad for our organization.
Really bad.
The key is to be able to have the structure and the procedures in place. So if an intermediate IT person, or even a junior IT person, comes on board, he's just following the specifications and the procedures in step one. Okay, step two, step three, and it's very easy for the junior person to assume this position, right? So
It's so true. And I think as a
Yeah.
company and as an owner of a company or as a company growing, you always have to be looking at that and looking at your team and making sure the people that are operating your systems, your company's positions, etc. Everything doesn't fall on one person. So by having the policies, procedures in place, by having the GRC processes in place, assessing your risk and everything else, it helps you with the structure of your organization.
Yes.
Again, so it goes back to the very, very first point. If one individual, and you just said it too, if one individual has all the knowledge in their head and they're not around and something catastrophic happens, and not even catastrophic.
What if they quit?
What if they quit? What if
Or what if that individual is bad and you need to get rid of it? You're stuck. You're stuck. I mean, I don't have anybody else that's senior, and there's no knowledge sharing stuff. So you're really stuck sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So good question, man. Yeah. So let's talk about the next point, and I know this is a little dual for some of you guys when it comes to, maybe we should tell stories, right?
Sure.
Like if we go into stories, or just, like sometimes, how do I put it? It really depends on the industry you're in, right? So, for example, I was talking to you about one of the big oil
Right.
companies. I'm not going to name them, but they have this rule for cybersecurity awareness training that if 3 strikes and you're out, right? So, for example, if you get phished through the simulation, okay, then somebody slaps your hand. If you get fished twice, then it's not really good. If you get fished 3 times, even though you were given instruction and training, you're fired. And why do companies do that? It's because they understand that the risks are so immense they could lose billions of dollars. No, I'm not talking about millions, but billions of dollars because of one person that didn't pay attention.
Well,
and
I'm sorry, Dan. You're what I was going to say with what you're going with where you're going is, and I say this a lot of times on our podcast and stuff. You never want to instill fear, right? You want to instill knowledge, and by implementing, for example, the GRC, and by implementing policies and procedures, by giving your people the proper training, even though there is a high, probability that they could make a mistake, and they learn from their mistake and they grow from that. And in organizations that really have high cybersecurity, strict rules, etc., like 3 strikes are out, like you're saying, we're not saying that to instill fear in any organization. I mean, by having knowledge, by having the policies, procedures, by understanding your risk assessments, by making sure your employees are trained, you're instilling a culture of knowledge and strength versus fear. If you just manage by fear, 3 strikes and you're out, that's fear. We don't want that to happen, because no one's going to click on emails. No one's going to be working. They're going to be like, what do I do? I have to ask all the time what to do. And so it's all about the policies and procedures and implementing training and making sure your staff and your team know what they need to know. So it's not by fear, it's by knowledge.
I agree. And basically the corporate Bible is the ISPs, right? So the information security policies.
Right.
They have to be very clear. They have to be very clear for everybody to understand, and they sign on the dotted line, and you need to abide by it. And the problem that we encounter in bigger organizations or executive level is that we're implementing, for example, cybersecurity awareness training for all the staff, but the executives are not following it.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
And then all of a sudden they say, "Oh, I got phished," and it's an executive. And like when they should be given the example to everybody else, because it's a top-down approach, they're not doing the things that we are telling them to do. So that is the misalignment, right? That's where we gotta tackle the top, so they understand the issues that could happen. Because there's a few companies, I mean, lots of companies that get hacked for billions of dollars, and then after they get hacked, that's when they understand. That's where the board of directors say, "Oh my God,
it's reactive,
we gotta
not proactive.
do something."
Yeah,
but before that, it's like loosey goosey.
You know what? In the last 5 years, being reactive versus proactive, okay, no problem. I completely understand and respect that. But with the internet, with the advancement of people moving from home, with what we just went through, with technology advancing dramatically, any and all businesses out there, small, medium, or large, shame on you. And I'll put that out there if you're not being proactive and not reactive anymore, because you have to have the knowledge of the importance of this moving forward, and you have the resources to be able to, pick up the phone, ask companies, ask your MSPs, ask your IT company,
yes,
put policy procedures in place to make this happen. and
Yep.
be proactive, not reactive, because it full circle, it's not even part of this topic. We talk about insurance all the time. It's
Yes.
dramatically and changing in the organized
Hey,
insurance companies aren't giving it anymore.
by the way,
Yeah.
next week we're gonna
Okay.
we're gonna have Josh Hunky from McFarland
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Perfect.
Rollins, McFarland and Rollins insurance company talk about how to get insurance, cyber insurance for your company.
Oh, beautiful. So
And maybe you can talk about how hard it is nowadays and how it's becoming harder and harder to get insurance for
well,
cybersecurity.
that's exactly where I was kind of going with that. And if we're talking about it next week, we will. But I think just to the point of governance and making sure things are in place, policies, procedures, understanding your cybersecurity landscape, architecture, making sure everything's protected, your vulnerabilities are being adhered to, etc. It's going to help put you in a position where a cybersecurity company is going to give you that insurance.
Yes.
If you don't, you potentially either could lose it, where they're not going to renew because they do random vulnerability assessments and stuff on your business and say, by the way, you have all these vulnerabilities, and we're not going to renew your insurance unless. So we could talk about that forever. We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah,
but it's certainly part of this
cybersecurity
conversation
insurance
today.
Insurance companies are getting smarter, and what they
Much
do is
smarter.
what Andrew's saying, because we're fully aware of this, and we have constant communication with our insurance partners on cybersecurity insurance. So if you are looking for cybersecurity insurance, we can help you out with that through our partner network as well. So,
Okay.
anyways, what's happening is that insurance companies are getting much smarter, not smarter, but vigilant of what they're doing, right? So, because companies are getting hacked left, right, and center, and that's a reality, right? So, what they're doing is, okay, we give you insurance, but first we have to do a scan on your entire network, either external or internal, and then you need to fix the problems. And then when it's time to renew next year, guess what? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do another scan, and depending on those results, is whether we're going to give you insurance or not. Right? So then people are struggling.
Yeah.
After that, we have a question from Oscar.
Do you guys work with insurance companies that specialize in cybersecurity? So, you know what? It's funny because it's a good question, and it's a question that probably people don't really fully understand. So, in the insurance world, there's a lot of brokers out there that get insurance from insurance providers. And in cybersecurity, there's only a handful probably in Canada. I don't want to speak to the United States because I'm not as familiar, but I would assume it's probably similar. There's only a handful of cybersecurity companies out there.
The big cybersecurity, the big insurance companies
that offer it. So brokers typically will broker your business to, the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 out there. What's really important is you kind of only get one shot to make the first impression, as they always say. So what happens is they'll give you a breakdown of what you need to be required for an insurance. And if you go to that organization and for example, two-factor authentication, I always say this word wrong.
Authentication.
Thank you. Basically,
2FA.
2FA. There you go.
2FA.
If you don't have it in place, you potentially won't get cybersecurity insurance. So there's a bunch of criteria that need to be met. And if any of them aren't met, and they decide, their underwriter says, no, we're not going to employ that, and we're not going to secure that company, it's very hard to go back to them. So that's why understanding your cybersecurity architecture landscape and make sure that you're working with the right team, or your IT team knows what they're doing.
Exactly.
Then that's going to help you do that, which is really, really important.
Yeah. Chanjis says many of the insurance companies do not offer services for cybersecurity. Absolutely.
That's right.
There's so many out there that are like, I'm not touching cybersecurity with a 10-foot pole because they know that it's a loss. It is not something that is going to make them money, right? So and it's insurance companies are getting scared. That's the key, because a lot of companies are getting hacked right, left, and center. And again, this is not a fear thing, right? But that's the truth
awareness
of the matter. And
it's about being proactive, right? I mean, that's the end of the day. And to answer your question, Oscar, here, which I didn't really I kind of went around it, and then we answered the next question is, so do you guys work with insurance companies that specialize in cybersecurity? So we work with brokers. We work with insurance companies to understand their policies and procedures, but we work with our clients. There is a disconnect. We have recommendations. We have clients who recommend us, etc. But we keep it at a separation where the insurance companies have businesses, bring them to us. We work with our clients with insurance companies to make sure everything aligns, which we all help each other out. So the insurance companies have their objectives. we have our objectives, and we hopefully align the client
Yeah.
to make sure that they're doing everything to make sure they're protected.
Yeah, we have great packages for our insurance brokers partners that we have, right? So the literature and also what we do with them is consulting with them. So, for example, they go out to a client, one of their prospects that they want to sell insurance to, and the prospect might have questions that are a little more technical in terms of cybersecurity, etc. So then the insurance brokers are like, "Oh, I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know how to go about that." So, hey, let's call Rhino. Let's call Dan. Maybe he can make it clarify these questions for me. So we give a lot of support for our insurance brokers, right?
Absolutely. So good questions, guys. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I just answered before I got it.
All right, nice. All right, guys, if you have any questions, please put them on the queue, and we're going to answer all of your questions. Thank you so much for participating. We are going to talk about, and I think this is what you were saying, or I think
What the
Diego
other question?
was saying.
Okay.
Yeah, resource balancing, right? So imagine you have thousands of vulnerabilities or risk in your risk register, right? So and problems. How do you manage resources in the most optimal way to be able to tackle the risk that you
Most
have?
critical. Right.
It's impossible. You will have to hire an army of IT personnel and people to be able to fix everything, right? So resource balancing is super important, right? Either through vendors, through people that you're hiring, through consultants, and third party businesses, and in tackling the things that are important for your organization, the crown jewels, as they call them, right? What are your crown jewels? Oh yeah, you know what? I have a SAP Business One that cost us $700,000 in this server, right? So that's your crown jewel. You need to protect that asset like a lion, and then everything else after, right? So resource balancing is super important.
Absolutely.
All right. What else? I have another one here. How about this one? Execution and enforcement. And that's where we were talking about policies are your Bible, right?
And this is where we talked about, less is more in some cases. So you got to make sure that, what policies you put in place are realistic, they're obtainable, they're achievable. You can basically manage them accordingly. The expectations, accountability, and everything else can be done. If all of a sudden you do this, and you put out 100 policies and procedures right away, and to understand they're going to all be enforced is probably unlikely, right? So it's about mitigating risk. It's about understanding and putting a procedure in place that's doable, achievable, and that can roll out nice and seamlessly with your organization. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the nail, Andrew. This is not an overnight thing. This is a process, right? To become what you really want to do as the consultant or as the CISO, for example. What you want to do is build a culture of security.
Right.
And that takes. It's not overnight. It's not an overnight process. So you got to start small, right? So if you're going to do ISPs, hit the most important ones, the top 10 ISPs, right? And then work your way into the rest, right? And then start enforcing slowly and gradually. Start enforcing the procedures and all of the security, and people will eventually start modifying their habits towards a better cybersecurity posture, right? That's the key.
You can't be scared to implement either. I mean, I'm not going to mention the university, but Dan, you and I were just talking about this the other day. We deal a lot with universities and schools, and we bring on co-op students, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it needs to be as a matter of fact, right? So a company may need to implement a policy or a procedure that as a matter of fact. It has to happen for our security, architecture, for our infrastructure. We need to implement this, and you either accept that or you don't. And that's it's not about managing again by fear or being like, diplomatic. It's about, this is what's best for the company and all of us involved, and this is why we have to do it. But again, sometimes that has to happen because
Yeah.
there could be at a critical place. But ideally, if you're not at that critical place, you can do it in stages to get you to there, so you don't
Yeah.
have to all of a sudden make that immediate, this has to happen tomorrow, guys, because we're at risk.
Okay, so this is super important, and now before this thought flies out of my head, one of my friends, and I call him one of my mentors, is the dean of technology of one of the colleges, right? And they have like 6 or 7 different campuses. In 2019, when COVID hit, everybody had to work remotely, right?
Right.
They had to work remotely. He had no choice, so he had to move every single system to be secure for remote work for their staff, etc. And what I'm trying to get at is that dual factor authentication. You were talking about dual factor authentication, right? And I was asking, so how did you manage to do all of your dual factor authentication when you have bring your own device or BYOD um, at your place? And he looked at me and he's like, we enforced it. Oh, so basically what you're saying is like the phones for your authenticator, right, for your dual authentication, um, belong to the people, the employees, not the company, and you enforced it. He's like, yeah, heck yeah, of course. If you want access to our resources as a teacher or as a staff member, you're going to have to pitch in, buddy. 99.9% of all the employees have devices. They have a mobile phone. They have an Android. They have an iOS. And we got 100% compliance. Everybody complied. They're like, sure, no problem. We'll do it. We will download the app, the authenticator, the Windows Authenticator app, and we'll authenticate using our own phones. And I was like, yes,
Yeah,
that's an
absolutely.
ISP that is really, really well enforced. So
Absolutely. And it
so
was a
there you go.
must,
So
right?
sometimes you have to put, as an employee, you have to put your part in this, right?
For sure, absolutely. There's a good question here Sean has, and that's that just reiterated kind of what I was saying, Dan. So thank you for that. How can you implement adequate security without
Inducing.
inducing paranoia? It's all about not being reactive and being proactive, as we said. I think it's doing things in stages, in bite-sized chunks. Education, not fear. So by making your team, your company more aware of why you're doing it, what's
Yes.
happening in the world, what's happening in your industry, the difference between, say, a supply chain versus your HR departments versus your manufacturing versus your financial department. Again, it's all about knowledge and understanding, and then who has the ability to connect to certain parts of your system, of your network, why that's happening. And then basically, again, back to education and training. The more you educate, the more you train, the more proactive you are with that. It becomes a part of your culture, and it's not
Yes.
about being paranoid or fearful, because you never want to instill fear. Fear just brings, all fear does is it stops
Yep.
people from working and being proactive, and
Yep.
that you don't want that. You want to manage from education, awareness, and understanding, and that'll get you to where you're going. So I
Yes.
hope that answers your question, but I think
Yeah.
that would be my perspective, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%. So the 3 things that you gotta cover: people, the process, and the technology. Those are the 3 things, right? And people are super important. It doesn't matter if you have really expensive cybersecurity and all the bells and whistles when it comes to technology. If people are not adequately trained, you're still gonna get hacked. You're still gonna get ransomware. You're still gonna have problems. So people are just as important as having your processes and technology, right?
And it's and
And
it's so easy to do that because there's so many tools out there. I mean, there's a lot of companies that do cybersecurity awareness training. I mean, I know we're in the process ourselves here at Rhino to be shooting our own videos. We also do it through another third party that we supply. It's a very
yeah,
cost effective solution for you to reach out to any organization and get your employees trained.
yes,
It's so easy.
yeah, and you know what? When people understand better when it's something personal that they might lose. Okay, So not just about cybersecurity is not just about the workplace. And this is what some of the companies don't understand. Oh yeah, we got to protect our asset. No, you got to protect your people.
People.
And what I
Yeah.
mean by your people is, what if one of your employees gets affected and they lose all their credit cards, or they lose whatever assets they have personally? That is not a good thing. That's not conducive to a good working environment and productivity that you want, right? So what the way you implement cybersecurity without inducing paranoia is focusing on the individual, right? So for example, you're parking the car, it's Christmas time, you're parking the car and you have your presence, you park the car, go to the store and leave your presence right in front of on the driver's seat. That's a no. Somebody's going to steal, break into your car and steal. So it starts from like very, very minute cybersecurity and security in general training for them, so they can be better, they can have better lives. Because it saddens me, really saddens me when I see people getting hacked, their savings, their valuables, their possessions, they get scammed and they lose money in a personal basis. It's not a good feeling, right? So
No, for sure.
when you're thinking about cybersecurity awareness training and on all those procedures that you're building, your policies, you need to think about outside of your work environment. You need to think about the people that are working for you. I hope that helps, man.
Yeah, I hope so too.
And Shanji says, sorry, can you put back? People are the main point of our attack surface. Yeah. Oh man, they call it, the weakest link. Our
That's what,
weakest link is people. And to me, it's more like our people, the people that work for you, are your champions. They're the frontline cybersecurity defense that you can have. So we
Yeah.
turn it around a little bit, right? Instead of saying, you're the weakest link. No. They're your champions. You want to build them to be the
aware
champions
and
of
knowledgeable.
cybersecurity.
And again,
that,
there's lots of places you can go and make sure they're educated. I mean, even insurance companies now are starting to provide cybersecurity awareness training when you get insurance, if you're fortunate enough to have it. Through some of our brokers are saying they're offering it at no cost to help them. So there's lots of channels to have your employees learn and be educated.
Yeah, we have another question from Boris. He asks how we calculate the potential financial impact of an interruption caused by a cyber event. Really good question. Really good question. You do a risk assessment, right? So what you do is you put all your assets in a list, right? And then you give them an impact and a likelihood, right? So to be able to get that cybersecurity risk scoring, right? Impact in terms of how much you're going to lose. And when you're adding, that's a quantitative value, right? So how much in terms of, okay, so if I lose a computer, one of the computers gets stolen, okay? The actual value of that computer is, let's say, $2,000.
Yeah.
But the data inside of that computer might be worth $10,000. Right? See what I'm getting with this? Let's suppose
or priceless if it's confidential information.
Exactly. Let's suppose the computer's unencrypted. You don't have BitLocker or some sort of encryption on your computer, and it gets stolen, and then the hackers have your data. That $2,000 value for that computer, it multiplies times $50,000 for that data that you might lose, right? Then you have to account for the operation cost. So, for example, you have the individual that's not going to be working. He's not going to be able to access his computer. There needs to be another computer that needs to be set up for him. He's all of that stuff. So you need to account for that. At the end of the day, you have a value, right? And then that value you need to divide or times the percentage of likelihood that event is going to occur. So some events, there is like for example a probability of 25% that could happen in a fiscal year. So whatever amount you have in there, you have to times that 25%. So now instead of being $200,000, it's going to be 25% of $200,000. So that's actually how you correctly calculate the risk. And I'm not just talking about a computer. I'm talking about all of the assets, right? Your crown jewels, everything. It might not be like a right on the dot. It might not be like a super exact number, but at least it gives you a range that you can work with.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I hope it makes sense.
Good question,
but that's
Boris.
a really good question. Okay. BIA. What is BIA?
Yeah, just that's why I was wondering. I was looking at it. Just I'm drawing a blank there.
I think he's talking about the business. Uh, what do you call it? Sorry, I'm drawing blanks here. Impact analysis. The big business impact
Business
analysis.
impact analysis.
Exactly. That's what
Exactly.
I'm talking about.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. Sorry. There's so many acronyms that sometimes I get.
You know, it's funny because we have a gentleman who works for us, and I just actually talked to him the other day. He always talked to me in acronyms, and I get so mixed up sometimes with all there. He just posted it. Perfect. Thank you so much.
He's talking about the business impact analysis. There's a big okay, so there's business continuity. There's a business impact analysis, which is part of the business continuity plan. So the BCP, right? So when you're doing your BCP, a part of it is your business impact analysis.
You know what's funny about the acronyms too? It's so true. And we just had a meeting the other day with an insurance brokerage, and part of our partnership with them is actually breaking down some of the acronyms that we use in the cybersecurity space, because you talk about MDRs and you talk about everything else, and it's like, what is that? And you got to break down what the word is and what it actually does for you, etc. So I appreciate you putting that back up there, business impact analysis, because we go through acronyms nonstop. Yes. So thank you for that.
Yes, and exactly that. You're so the thing is when you're looking at business impact analysis, you don't really calculate the likelihood. That's inside of the business continuity, right? So in the business impact analysis, you only calculate the impact to the organization. That's interesting. It's all part of your risk management. Absolutely. So all right, so it is 12:51. What else do we have in here? Risk management. Okay, let's talk about risk management. How do you manage risk, Andrew, as the executive? And I don't mean to put you on the spot again, but I do, because I love it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I think it's all about understanding the most critical assets you have. So and then putting those in priority to making sure they're taken care of and they're protected on a per need basis. So ideally, you kind of have let's call it multiple pillars, and then which pillars are more important than the others. And if we are hacked or if something happens, you basically created that risk management visual to basically know what I should be taking care of first, or what should be always taken care of. And then if I have ever attacked or held at ransom or what have you, ideally I've put a risk management schedule in place, or process in place.
You're getting there. You're getting closer.
Am I getting there?
Yeah,
okay,
you're getting there.
You continue.
Yeah. There's something called a risk register.
Okay.
It's a log. Okay, it's just a log, and the things that you put in there is like the risk. And I'm talking about practical things. I'm not talking about loosey goosey stuff. I'm talking about, for example, employees are not sure about this training, or there's no encryption of all laptops, or there's you put the risk in there, whatever the risk is, and what is the inherent risk. So is it low, medium, high, critical, right? Then the treatment. What are you going to do with that risk? Either are you going to mitigate it, are you going to remediate it, or are you just going to let it be, right? And then the control that you are going to apply for that. So what I mean by control is the procedure for the mitigation, for example, of that risk, which is a paper that says this is how the company is going to, or the IT department, for example, is going to solve this risk problem. Right. And then of course, you create a register, and then you start as a cybersecurity, like a person inside of the company, or like a consultant. You just start filling that up. They just create the register and start adding all this stuff, and then you start creating a list of all the risk, right? And then you are able to actually prioritize the things that you want to tackle first, obviously. And what's really nice for executives is when you provide you can provide a really nice graph, right? So, for example, impact and likelihood, and then you can put a what do you call it, a map, a heat map in there, saying how many critical risks you have, how many medium, how many low, and then the next month you provide another graph with the executive report showing how you're fixing, or obviously the key is to be able to solve as many of those problems you have eventually in the course of a period of time. So that's basically very close to what you were saying. A schedule is super important, and it's got to be filled, right? So this risk register.
Ron,
all right.
So far I like what you have. I hope you will have more. Well, if you're talking about our podcasts, we have them every Friday. We apologize. The last 2 weeks, we hadn't had a chance to do that, but we typically do it every Friday at noon. So we certainly love having you, Ron, and we're happy that you enjoy the content, if that's what you're referring to. And we look forward to having you next week.
I think next week is going to be super good, guys. Next week, we're going to have Josh Hunke from McFarland and Rollins Insurance Company talking about really good stuff. How to get insurance, cybersecurity insurance. What happens when you get hacked, let's say ransomware, or in your company is brought down to your knees, and then you're not given the opportunity to renew your contract, or your contract is canceled. What do you do after, man? How do you seek cyber insurance afterwards? What are the things that you need to do to be able to bring your company into to be securitable or insurable, right? So I think those are key questions that we're going to be asking Josh, and so on. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I think, do we have any questions or anything else we can conclude?
I think we're good. I think we're wrapping it up. I don't see anything on there. And you know what? Oscar can't wait for, he's not out there, but accountability. We can talk about accountability quickly if we want to. I mean, it's accountability. We kind of talked about that through the program. It's really just about building the policies and procedures, and then people are accountable to make sure that they adhere to those policies and procedures. And by having a guideline to follow, you can refer back to, so you can prove that accountability. And again, it's about instilling knowledge and not fear.
All right.
Hopefully. That's it. That's all, I think.
That's it, guys. Thank you so much. Next Friday, Getting Cyber Insurance with Josh Hanking, McFarland Rollins, live LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Friday, 12 o'clock. Don't miss it. Thank you, everybody.
See you, everybody.
See you next time.
Appreciate it.